What's up, everybody? This is Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com, HawgSports.com. The exhibition season is over for Razorback basketball, and we're going to talk to Curtis Wilkerson about everything going on with Razorback hoops, and it's game week back again. Mississippi State on the docket this week. You know we're going to dive deep into that one. All that and more on Hog Sports Live. Been a little bit since we've done the show. Took a little bit of time off, some much-needed time off for Arkansas, for the show, for everybody, I think. I think it was refreshing to sit back and watch a little bit of football with other teams play, not have too much emotionally invested, but we're back in it this week. Before we get started, I want to remind you there's plenty of ways to watch and listen. You can always tune in on Facebook Live. If you haven't subscribed to the page, be sure to do so, both on YouTube and Facebook. Follow the page on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube, hit the notifications bell so you're notified anytime we upload new videos. Also available on Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much for your 5-star reviews. If you haven't taken a moment to leave us a 5-star review, take a moment to do so now. Also available on Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, anywhere else you can think of to find your favorite podcast. HawgSports is just $1 right now for your first month. HawgSports.com. Be sure to sign up for our newsletter if you haven't done so, and sign up for breaking news text alerts as well. All right, before we jump into everything, I want to get to a few housekeeping items like we like to do. Arkansas LSU kickoff time set 12 days from now. That's not this week, but the next. Arkansas is 5-3, LSU 4-4. They're going to play at 6:30 in Death Valley on SEC Network. There's not much better venues than that. I mean, that is going to be, even though LSU's fallen on hard times, that's going to be, it's always a great venue. The chance of rain is never, as they say, in Death Valley for a night game. So that'll be good. But first, before that, Arkansas starts full swing for Mississippi State. They actually started on Sunday this week because Tuesday they get off for the voting. Some of the teams in the SEC actually asked for a waiver on that. Arkansas just went ahead. They wanted to get them back, so they went ahead and practiced on Sunday. And they'll practice today, and then Tuesday will be off for voting and stuff. So we won't have any media availability or anything Tuesday. In fact, today we spoke to Sam Pittman a little bit ago. And then we got practice around 4:10 or so. And then we'll have player availability today instead of tomorrow at 6:15 due to that. And then no availability. And then Wednesday we'll speak to Sam Pittman. So mix things up a little bit this week. But back in full swing for prep. Arkansas needed a break. I don't think there's any question about that. Everybody knows they needed some time off to get healthy. And really kind of in a way got 2 weeks really. I mean, if you think about it, they had no choice but to rest players during the UAPB week because they were so banged up. So they, rested a lot of the starters, especially guys like Traylon Burks, and, he's kind of had a foot issue that they've really worked on. And they, there's so many injuries like that you don't talk about. You only talk about, Dalton Wagner broke a finger, so he's out. Or Markel Etsy's got an injury, he's out. But there's so many guys that are just like, soft tissue stuff and, sprains, all those kinds of things, and, a bruise here and there. Even Sam Pittman didn't mention this, but the Auburn game, KJ Jefferson wasn't 100%. He was healthier probably for the Ole Miss game than he was the Auburn game. He's got the knee issue, but he's back, feeling healthy, feeling refreshed. And I wonder about that a little bit. Like, what is the balance with having – I'm not saying it was like 2 bye weeks, but that UAPB week, they took it pretty easy on them, especially the starters primarily. And then last week was really just young guys getting work and resting other guys. Like Traylon Burks didn't do anything except for like walk-through stuff. So they really took it easy on those guys. But, when you go from like, you're in the grind, you're in the middle of it. Mississippi State, for example, 3 weeks in a row coming up here after their bye week. They've been in it. And for Arkansas, is there like a bit of I don't know if layover is the right word, but some kind of like effect of like jumping back into it and be like, we're playing football again against a really good opponent. How much will that play a role in it? Pittman said he was pleased with the energy, enthusiasm, and stuff they had on Sunday's practice, not necessarily the execution on offense. And they're going to need to execute on offense. Will Rogers, the Mississippi State quarterback, I watched the game. I'm sure you did. Kentucky. A lot of people were surprised to see Mississippi State favored in that one, but that just shows you how important it is to be a home team in the SEC. Will Rogers was 36 of 39 passing in that game. That's 92.3%. 344 yards, that doesn't stand out. That's not a high yardage total for 36 completions. But still, for a quarterback in the SEC throwing at least 30 passes, that is an all-time record. 92.3%. All-time record. Now, we can say, okay, they didn't complete a high yards per completion, but there have been, countless number of quarterbacks through the history of the SEC that have had an opportunity to set this record, and Will Rogers is the guy that set it. It's the second year in a row that Arkansas is going to be facing a Mississippi State quarterback after a record-setting performance. Remember, KJ Costello last year went for 623 passing yards and 5 touchdowns. 623 passing yards was the SEC record when they beat number 6 LSU 44-34. They bumped up to number 16 nationally and suddenly became unbeatable for Arkansas. And Arkansas, of course, won that game if you look back. 21-14, I believe. 3 interceptions the next week. So that is crazy, though. It's 2 different quarterbacks playing for the same coach, the same team, setting 2 different passing records. All-time SEC records. Pretty remarkable. Now, when you look at it, the yards per completion, and what you have to keep in mind with Mississippi State is they supplement a lot of their run game with passing. Like if you look at the top receivers in the SEC in terms of catches, 2 of them are Mississippi State running backs. 2 of them, including the number 2 guy in the country, tied for number 2 in the SEC, is a running back. So that's that just shows you how much the screen game is involved in for guys like Greg Brooks and Jaden Johnson, how important that nickel role is, fighting through blocks, getting through those screens. And it's a tough position to play. It's going to be really important. Greg Brooks had a really good game last year, had a big interception, a pick 6, kind of set the tone for it last year. I do think, though, that for a guy like Will Rogers, the fact that he's willing to, take what the defense gives you, throw these screen passes and stuff, not force stuff, probably will benefit Mississippi State versus Costello, maybe tried to push a little bit and paid for it. Joe Fouché had 2 interceptions in that game also. So we'll see. It's going to be interesting. Arkansas is going to, play the game. I would assume they may surprise us, but I would assume they're going to try to keep everything in front of them and take advantage where they can take advantage. Again, when you look at Will Rogers, yards per completion, he averaged 8.8 yards per completion and completed 36 passes, 344 yards. 8.8. Yards per attempt. His yards per completion were 9.3. Now look at KJ Jefferson, for example. KJ on the season, okay, Will Rogers 75.2% on the season, but we're just talking about his specific game. But KJ on the season averages 15.1 yards per completion compared to 9.6 in that game for Rogers. And KJ only averages like 61.5%. Rogers is 6th in pass efficiency, and a large part of that is 6.6 yards per attempt on the season, despite easily leading the SEC in passing yards. Again, a lot of that is really just kind of supplementing for a run game. I think that's interesting how they run that offense. To me, like Mike Leach is like, because you look at like what they've done this season, and they have notable wins against North Carolina State, Kentucky, both of those at home, and then to me, their best win was winning at College Station, beating Texas A&M like 25-22, some kind of weird score, something like that. They lost at home in week 3, 28-25 to LSU, and fell at home to Alabama 49-9. And then their worst loss is probably losing at Memphis 31-29 in week 2. They also trounced Vanderbilt on October 23rd, 45-6 in Nashville. So to me, like what all this kind of says to me, like against most opponents, nobody's safe against Mike Leach and Mississippi State. Nobody's safe, and that includes Mike Leach and Mississippi State. It includes themselves. They're also not safe from this because they're going to throw the ball 55 times average per game, and sometimes it works out in your favor and sometimes it doesn't. It's a lot of high risk, high reward kind of situation. So Arkansas is in a couple of streaks heading into this game. It's a 3 p.m. kickoff on SEC Network. So prior to the bye week, Arkansas had played 4 straight 11 a.m. games. 4 straight. And they went 1-3 during that stretch, the only win coming against UAPB. Almost beat Ole Miss, obviously lost on a 2-point conversion try. It also ends a streak of 5 straight games at 5 different venues. They played in Arlington, they played in Athens, they played in Oxford, they played in Fayetteville, and then they played in Little Rock. I would be surprised if there is another football team, whether it's high school, college, or pro, that did that this year, that played at 5 straight different venues. Pretty rare. And it's not just the SEC scheduling. Plenty of it's Arkansas's fault for the way they've scheduled things with, playing Arlington, playing in Little Rock. In my opinion, moving forward is, first, the Arlington game's got to go. I think it will. I think everybody wants it over. And secondly, they shouldn't be playing anybody in Little Rock, and they've moved to this, who's a Power 5 team. They should, Arkansas State, I think that's a great concept for that game. Playing, kind of meeting halfway in a sense, a little closer to Jonesboro, I guess, but kind of meeting halfway. And, playing in-state opponents and stuff like that. It's just kind of the way college football has evolved that it just doesn't make the same sense that it used to make in playing that game in Little Rock. And it's just the way it is. It's unfortunate. Some of my greatest memories are attending Razorback games in Little Rock. But I don't know that it makes a lot of sense anymore. So a couple of streaks end in this one. Let's see. And I'll tell you this too, just with that Arlington game, I would if we go back in time, I would guarantee you that Arkansas wouldn't lose 9 straight if they were playing home and home with Texas A&M. There's no question that this game hurt Arkansas being in Arlington all these years. We're going to get back to seeing Arkansas's defense the way they were. Last time out against a quality team, Bo Nix was 21-26 for 292 yards. That's 80%. I mean, if Will Rogers is anybody's 80%, you're going to be in trouble, right? Even though he averages, 75% on the year. But I really feel like in that Auburn game, we didn't talk a whole lot about it afterwards, but I really think that Arkansas they got the bad end of a lot of calls. And I'm not saying you blame the refs, but I think there's this narrative out there that you can't blame the refs. Who says that? Why can't you? Everybody complains about SEC officiating, but you can't blame the refs for a loss. I'm not blaming them for a loss. I'm just saying that's one in several categories. Why Arkansas lost that game to Auburn. They got the bad end of the stick on a lot of calls. The strip, the fumble. That's a fumble. There's 2 pass interference call that were pretty key that really hurt Arkansas. The 4th down spot. So there were a lot of things that really hurt Arkansas in that. But I think it's kind of the Don't Be a Litter Bug campaign. Somebody that was created by a big business, I believe. I don't think that was created by activists. It's something to do with returning bottles, and let's put it on the consumer to throw their bottle away, to recycle their bottle versus us taking 10 cents or whatever for the bottle. But that's I don't think a lot of people know that, and I probably didn't get it exactly right, but that's not some activist created this campaign, Don't Be a Litter Bug. That's created by people that are making bottles. So, anyway, which Arkansas defense will we see? At its best, Arkansas's defense allows 10 points against Texas A&M, 21 points against Texas. At its worst, it's given up 38 to Auburn and 52 to Ole Miss. So that's the balance. Now, should be a lot healthier. It's going to play a big role for them, I think. And how healthy is Mississippi State? Mississippi State's coming off of 2, pretty confirming wins, Vanderbilt and Kentucky. But again, it's at Starkville. People were surprised that Mississippi State was favored in that. I'm not, just because we've been watching teams go on the road in the SEC for a while now. It's tough to play at anybody else's place except for Nashville, where odds are you're going to have more fans there than they will. It's just tough. It's tough to go on the road, especially when they ring those cowbells. They'll stop them right before the play, but right when the ball snaps, they start going again. But this game's in Fayetteville, and it should be nice. I don't know what the weather's calling for right now, but I'll tell you what, if you're coming up from Little Rock, from Central Arkansas on 49, or you decided to veer off and take the pig trail maybe, you're going to get a pretty drive. The leaves are changing. It's that weather again. Okay. Before we get into more about Mississippi State, I want to talk about Arkansas basketball. I said I would get to Curtis Wilkerson here shortly. So Arkansas is 2-0 in the exhibition season, barely. 68-60 winners over North Texas. And then we get a little bit of a break here before we jump into the real thing. For those of you who don't follow Curtis, you can follow him
Trey.
at Kurt Wilkerson _ on Twitter. And, of course, he is our lead basketball analyst, does everything, football, all that kind of stuff. Curtis, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. We were going over, just kind of the latest things that's going on with Razorback football and stuff, and wanted to shift gears and mix things up a little bit and talk a little bit of basketball. And you've seen Arkansas play 3 times. You saw them in the red-white game. You saw them in both exhibitions. It's not just coming out like gangbusters like we thought in terms of, maybe they need a little bit of time to gel and find their way.
Yeah, I think that's 100% right. I don't think going into these 2 exhibition games against, what in reality is a pretty average Division II school and a mid-major program in North Texas, that's pretty good. We know that. But to be in a dogfight and, in the final minutes against both of those teams, it does come as a surprise. But there are some reasons for that, and quite honestly, that's why these exhibitions exist in the first place. You want to be able to work out the kinks before it really counts in the win-loss column. So it's been interesting to see. There's no denying the talent on this team. They've got some really good players, and in terms of just offensive firepower, I think that they've got more at their disposal than maybe they even did last year. And that's saying something, given the type of team that they had. But, one thing that's really, really impacted what Arkansas is trying to do and head coach Eric Musselman is injuries. I feel like over 50% of the things I write about, whether it's football or basketball, I'm writing about injuries. It's crazy. But, the preseason has been tough on Arkansas. Knock on wood, luckily they've been able to avoid anything super serious that's going to impact someone's availability, getting on into the season. But they've had several guys who've been banged up and missed a lot of critical practice time. So, when you think about a team that's got a lot of new faces and guys evolving into new roles and new surroundings and a new system, and Eric Musselman, what he does is different than a lot of places in terms of, just X's and O's and just the style and the atmosphere around the program. That kind of sets them back a little bit. They haven't done a lot of contact, 5-on-5 scrimmaging. On a lot of days, they don't even have enough players to go 5-on-5. So I think what you're seeing early, especially on the offensive end, is guys a little bit unsure of where they're supposed to be, who's supposed to take the shot. I thought it was really interesting. Chris Likes, after this game the other day, said, hey, one of my biggest things as a point guard is trying to figure out where my guys – what are their best spots on the floor? Where do they score from? Where do they operate from the best? And he doesn't know because he hasn't been able to play with them a lot. So, we have seen 3 games at this point, but we have not seen the full Razorback team yet. So it's going to be a while, I think, before we do.
Curtis Wilkerson joining us again. Follow him at Kurt Wilkerson _ on Twitter. So we're 10 days away from the season opener against Mercer. What injuries are we talking about right now? I know Jalen Williams missed with the back. What are we talking about right now? These things that could be long-term or stuff that maybe will get settled here in the next few days?
Yeah, I think most of it's going to get settled, and that's if there's a silver lining, I think that's it. Jalen Williams missed the North Texas game over the weekend with back spasms, so I don't think that's going to be anything that lingers. He actually warmed up with the team in pregame, and I didn't even realize until right before the game when they came back out for their layup lines right before tip-off that he was back in street clothes. So I think it was kind of a game-time decision there with him. He should be fine. But they did return Trey Wade, the transfer forward out of Wichita State, who's been dealing with a knee injury. He missed somewhere between 4 and 6 weeks of practice. He just got back into practice last week, and because they were shorthanded, he's out there after just a couple of days, and he played 17 big minutes. So, and he looked good. It was good to see him back out there. But Kamani Johnson, another power forward who you're going to rely on some to rebound for this team. He's got a cast on his wrist right now. That's supposed to come off this week. And Musselman projects that he should be ready around opening day. We don't know what shape he'll be in. But those are kind of the main guys. KK Robinson's been in and out a little bit. He's still kind of recovering. He's recovered, but getting back to 100% consistency with that foot. So, those guys, and then they've had a couple others. JD Note had an ankle. Aldis Toney had a sore knee, so guys have just been missing some days here and there, and they just haven't had the full complement of players. But they're going to be pretty close to full strength as we get into the season, it looks like.
So, Curtis, looking at this team, assuming that everybody gets back healthy in 10 days for Mercer, or later on, just whenever, what's your starting lineup look like? Because we know there's a lot of names, a lot of faces out there. We know when it gets down to the brass of it, it's going to be like 8 guys probably. But what is your starting 5, and maybe who are your top 3 after that, just right now? And we'll check in on this again later on down the road and see if that changes.
Sure. I think, my starting 5, I like the group that they started with in the first exhibition against East Central. I know it sounds weird saying that because they struggled, but, obviously Devo, Devontae Davis in there, J.D. Notte, who's, obviously the Super 6 man last year, but he started both these exhibition games and looked really good. He's led the team in scoring, just really had a great offseason. I think he's ready to kind of elevate in that starting lineup. So I'd have Devo and JD in the backcourt. Aldis Toney is a guy, a transfer from Pitt. He's played about 35 minutes a game. He hasn't really gotten it going offensively yet, but man, he's a big athletic wing. He can defend, really gets to the rim. I think as he gets a little bit more comfortable, those shots are going to start falling. I like him there at the 3. Stanley Amude, who had a forgettable scrimmage against East Central, was much better against North Texas. He slots in really nice at the 4. He's kind of a mismatch nightmare. He can score inside and out. He really got it going on Saturday. I think he's going to be a big piece. And then Jalen Williams, I think you saw just how important he is to this team in his absence on Saturday. Arkansas really struggled on the glass, defending the paint, giving up second chance points in the paint. He eliminates a lot of that. Just a volume rebounder, really good post defender. So I like him at the 5. That would probably be my starting 5. Chris Likes, I think, is really, providing instant offense off the bench. At the point guard, he can play the off guard spot even at 5'7", but he can really score it and really create. He could be a guy that starts down the road, but he's looking good in that 6-man role right now. I really like what I saw out of Trey Wade. You're kind of wondering who's going to fit in behind Jalen Williams at that center spot. And we know that Connor Vanover has some limitations and matchup problems at times. And Trey Wade looked really good in there. So I think he's going to be somebody that factors in. Then that last spot, I think, is really what's up for grabs. Jackson Robinson earned the start on Saturday. He's been uneven. He's a knockdown shooter, but he hasn't made his shots yet. So looking for some more consistency from him. KK Robinson got in. Debo was in some foul trouble, and KK got some extended run at point. And to be perfectly honest, I thought the offense had its best flow and best rhythm with him kind of running the show. He had 4 assists and maybe 1 turnover, maybe none at all, but really had him in a good rhythm. He wasn't really looking for a shot. He played some great defense, so he might factor into that conversation as well.
You heard it, everybody. Curtis Wilkerson said no shots are falling. They're completely out of sync, out of rhythm. It's just a disaster up there.
Terrible.
They'll get it together. I mean, we got Mercer on November 9th, and then Gardner-Webb is Saturday, and the November 13th. And I guess that's probably going to be an early game, since we know the LSU game is now going to be at is going to be at 6:30. So I'm guessing that'll be an early game for that one.
Yeah, I think that probably will be. And what I will say, it's fair, I think. You want to take the final score, the results from these exhibitions with a little bit of a grain of salt, but you did expect more, from a top 20 preseason team in these couple exhibitions, but they are going to be fine. I think maybe a little bit behind schedule in terms of where Musselman wants them to be. We talked about how the injuries have impacted that, but in that first half against North Texas on Saturday, they really looked the part. I think they flashed that potential of the type of team you think they could be. And it may have been good for them to have some struggles there and kind of a dry spell in the second half, just as a reminder of, hey, there's still plenty to work on.
Well, I mean, when you just compare it to last year, the same time, Curtis, I mean, the red-white game was 103-67 against their, Division FCS, whatever member Mississippi Valley team. It was 142-62, 142 points. And then they played North Texas also in their second exhibition and won 69-54.
That's right. Yeah, that's very true.
And they also put those on SEC Network Plus and didn't do that for either of these, which was annoying.
Yeah, it is annoying. It really is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, Curtis. Anything you want to chime in with football? I guess I know you had to cover the basketball Saturday, but it was kind of nice to not have anything too emotionally invested and just kind of sit back and watch some other teams play.
Yeah, it really was. I caught a lot of actually the Michigan State-Michigan game before I went up to Bud Walton. That was a fun one. And I've seen bits and pieces of that Mississippi State-Kentucky game. I want to dive into that maybe tonight or tomorrow and get a good look at the Bulldogs. It was a pretty impressive win for them last weekend. Yeah. So they'll be coming in hot. But, hey, Kentucky's a physical team, so maybe they'll be a little banged up when they come in here on Saturday. We'll see.
I really think it comes down for Arkansas to their emotion, how long it takes them to realize that they're in a football game, if that's a factor at all, because they have been kind of out of it for. I mean, UAPB was just. I mean, they just walked right through them. In the first half, the starters are pulled, and they took it easy in practice that week, and then last week, they really took it easy on the starters in practice, and so how long does it take them to get it? And I don't know. I mean, I think watching their energy level right out of the gate could tell you a lot about how this game's going to go.
I think so too. I think it's going to be really interesting. I don't know. I guess you guys will get to view a little bit of practice later. I don't know how much they're going to do, but I just wonder how intense practice is going to be to kind of maybe curb some of that. I thought that was a good question that you asked in the press conference today, and it is going to be interesting to see early on. So maybe getting out to a fast start will be one of those keys to victory.
Yep. All right, Curtis. Appreciate you joining us, man, as always.
Yep, of course, anytime.
All right, everybody. That's Curtis Wilkerson. Again, CURT Wilkerson _ on Twitter. He's a great follow. If you're a Razorback basketball fan, like Curtis has been with us for over a year now, but there's going to come a time here, and we're not too far from it, that when you think of Arkansas basketball and coverage, you think of Curtis Wilkerson. He's on that kind of trajectory. If you ask anybody who follows him, is familiar with Curtis, they'll tell you that. So follow Kurt Wilkerson on Twitter and read his stuff on HawgSports.com. I promise you'd be glad you did. And you can also plenty of ways to follow that information. We put all of our free content up on Facebook. So for those of you who aren't following our Facebook page, we run this show live on Facebook. Just how we like to do it. We have 80,000 plus followers there, so we like to run this show live there. So if you haven't followed the page there, be sure to do so and share it with somebody you think might like. If you got a dad, uncle, brother, sister, cousin, whatever you think might like the show, old college buddy that doesn't know about it, then make sure you inform them about it. And also available on YouTube. Subscribe to the page, interact, share through that. Hit the notification bell so you're notified anytime we upload new videos. And I really appreciate the 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts. We're the highest rated Razorback show. We're the highest rated Razorback show right now at 5 stars, and we want to keep that up. So let other people know what to think. Spotify, Stitcher, anywhere else you can think of, find your favorite podcast. All right. A couple more things I want to go over before we get to your questions here. Just a few stats here and there. If you look at Mississippi State right now, in turnover margin, they're 7th. They have thrown 7 interceptions, 5 fumbles lost. So they are 12 and turnovers lost. So right in the middle of the pack, right there with Arkansas. Arkansas and Mississippi State are both tied for 7. Obviously, turnovers are going to play a big role in this game. Mississippi State puts it in the air a lot. I mean, 134 times more than the next closest team, I think, is Ole Miss. So they put it up a lot, thrown 7 interceptions, as I've mentioned, which is also a little high. So something to keep an eye on. Mississippi State is averaging 425.5 yards a game, which is only 8th, which is a little bit surprising because they pass the ball so much. But again, it comes down to those yards per completion / attempt. When you look at the passing offense, 371.1 yards per game, averaging 55.4 throws per game and hitting 75%. Barry Lunny Jr. used to say when he's talking about completion percentages and stuff that they didn't have when he was playing. They didn't have all those gimme throws. Completions were completions. They were throwing downfield. They weren't throwing all these screens and tunnel screens and stuff like that. So one reason those percentages are way up there. And that's, with the air raid offense going back to when we remember it at Kentucky and probably Valdosta State before that. I never saw them play, but I certainly saw Kentucky. They were doing the same kinds of things. Obviously, it's all evolved, but doing the same kind of things. Rushing offense, last in rushing offense, as you would expect, 54.38 yards per game. I mean, barely even trying. And again, they supplement. You look at those running backs, 2 of them are in the top 5 in receptions per game. 2 of Mississippi State's running backs. Listed at running backs anyway. Kind of air quote running back, I guess. Scoring offense, only 28 points a game for Mississippi State. 11th in scoring offense. Total defense, 3rd in total defense. Now, a lot of this is because they hold the ball a lot. I mean, they throw a lot of short passes. They pick up rushing yardage type of gains. They hit it at a high completion rate, and they keep the ball, moving. So they're going to lead the SEC in time of possession. Passing defense, they're 9th, 223.6 yards per game. Rushing defense, they're actually pretty solid. Tied for second with Alabama at 89.6 yards per game surrendered. Scoring defense, 9th, 24.6 per game. Time of possession, as I mentioned, 35 minutes, 7 seconds. Easily leading, ahead of Alabama, Florida, Georgia. Those are the programs. Texas A&M. Those are the teams that are a little bit behind them there. So, and as I mentioned, Will Rogers is 328 of 436 passing, 75.2%, 2,892 yards, 19 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Again, yards per attempt, just 6.6 yards per attempt. That ranks out of quarterbacks that have competed in at least 75% of their games in the SEC. That ranks tied for 10th, with 6.6 yards per completion. KJ Jefferson, by contrast, is 9.3 yards per attempt. Excuse me, those are attempts. I always mix those up, but those are attempts. Now, going back to these receiving numbers, Mekhi Polk has 63 receptions on the year, which leads the SEC. 75.4 yards per game. He's averaging 9.6 yards per completion, 9.6 yards per catch. And number 2 is Jaquavius Marks, who's a running back. He's tied for number 2 in the SEC in catches as a running back. He has 5.9 catches per game. That's 58 total, 43 yards. Excuse me, 5.9 yards per reception. So he's catching short passes, screens, those types of things. And then you scroll down to number 5, there's Traylon Burks. But number 5 tied for Burks with also 42 catches. So Burks has 42 for 717 yards, and tied with him is Dylan Johnson from Mississippi State, 42 catches for 261 yards. Less than 10 yards per catch more. Burks is at 17.1. This kid's at 6.2, 32.6 yards per game. 5.3 receptions per game. 5th in the SEC. I mean, then you got Austin Williams, who's up there at number 14. I mean, obviously you would expect a lot of receivers in here. Jaden Wally, who's at 11. All right. And then rushing, I mean, you got to go down to number 34, 35 for Jaquavius Marks and Dylan Johnson, both averaging around 31 yards per game on the ground. So not a lot of rushing yards. When you look at defense, Jet Johnson, junior linebacker, has 59 tackles. Nathaniel Watson, junior linebacker, has 52 tackles. They rank 16th and 24th in tackles. Sacks, Tyra Sweet at number 25 with 3 sacks. And interceptions, you've got Emmanuel Forbes, sophomore cornerback, with 3 total interceptions. Monteric Brown also tied for second with 3 total interceptions. And Fred Peters at 7, tied for 7th with 2 interceptions. So that's the numbers right there for Mississippi State. All right, we're going to turn over to your questions now. Let's see what we got. NP Rich says, Woo Pig Suey, anniversary follower. 1 year anniversary with NP Rich. Appreciate you MP. Jonathan Eastersling says, Woo Pig Suey from Bentonville. Chad Everett says, what's up, Trey? Hoop Hogs got their work cut out for them. Don't shape up. If they don't shape up, Nats are gone for the year in South Georgia. That's good. Hogs, go Hogs, beat MSU. By the way, I forgot to mention this, but Curtis Wilkerson also does a sister podcast called Hog Hoops Live. It's on a different channel on YouTube, but it's the same channel on Facebook, same podcast channel, all that kind of stuff. But he'll be getting that going pretty soon. We usually like to do those kind of midweek games, so like after the midweek game, so either a Wednesday or a Thursday, usually for those. So and he does stand-ups from time to time if it's a big game or it's like the first exhibition, things like that. He'll do like a 10, 15-minute recap on those things. So be on the lookout for that. But on YouTube, it's under the Hog Hoops Live channel, so it's a different channel on YouTube. But same on Facebook, same on all your podcasts. Nathan Lair says, do you think we'll see any personnel changes coming out of the bye week? I mean, we saw some in the UAPB game. I mean, they started Miles Slusher over Simeon Blair, started Jaden Johnson over Greg Brooks. So there's a couple right there. I know that they really liked what they saw out of Cam Ball, so maybe we see Cam Ball more on the defensive line. But I don't know that we're going to see just like this wealth of changes, because I think when healthy, Arkansas actually is a pretty good team. So I don't know that there's a whole big need for like all these huge changes. Now, I think we may continue to see Miles Slusher in there. May see Jaden Johnson. Jaden Johnson versus Greg Brooks. Do I want to have the experience there, or do I like the ceiling that Jaden Johnson, the physicality, fighting through those screens? What do I like there? I think Greg Brooks has had moments where he's just like, early in the year I thought Greg Brooks was playing really, really good. And, it kind of waned a little bit. Sometimes it's an injury. Sometimes those kinds of things factor in. So, but I think for this game, I think I might rather see Greg Brooks in there just because of his experience. Because and that's one of the questions I asked Sam Pittman today. It's just such a difficult position to play as a nickel, because they're going to run at you. You can be a conflict guy. You got to fight through blockers on that screen game, which they're going to run a lot. You got to make tackles. It's a tough position to play. You got to be quick enough to cover a slot receiver, but physical enough to fight through a blocker and make the tackle on a screen play. So, tough spot to play. 3-year anniversary follower Les Holt says, finally a night game, and wouldn't you know it's an away game in Death Valley. It's a tough place to play, Les. Now, I've been there before at a night game in Death Valley, and Arkansas won. I've seen them win there at night. 2-year anniversary follower Will Bonham says, Trey Biddy, do you think Kendall Browse and Barry Odom will stay another year? I don't think either of them will leave for a coordinator job voluntarily. I don't think either one will. I think if there's an opportunity for a head coaching job, and there's some jobs starting to pop up. We've seen TCU, we know LSU, Texas Tech. There's some jobs popping up in this area where you'd think maybe there's somebody they would look at. Mark Douglas is a 5-year anniversary follower. I suspect Mississippi State will learn a lot from last year's game, how Ole Miss did this year, and game plan. Be prepared for the drop 8 to chew up yards with 10-plus play drives and not get the home run on every play. I hope our defense game plan is not what they are preparing for all week. I mean, they're going to throw short passes. So do you want a bend but don't break type of situation where you do drop 8, or do you want to attack them more? I don't know. I mean, Mike Leach isn't really going to change a whole lot of what he does. Arkansas pretty much drop 8 the entire – there might have been a couple of plays where they brought a defensive back down, but a couple meaning like 2 at most. Casey French Fulton says, us Arkansas fans in Texas like it though in Arlington. I know, but okay, so this is another reason. This is another reason, like 11 o'clock games, playing these 5 games in a row at 5 different venues has hurt Arkansas. Because the only one game in that time, and it was an 11 o'clock game against Auburn, could they have visitors. Arkansas, let this sink in for a second. Arkansas is the only team in the SEC in the month of October that did not host a single official visitor. The only team in the SEC that didn't host a single official visitor. That's a fact. That is a bad fact. That's not good. Okay? And a lot of it is because, sure, they got back-to-back road games scheduled by the SEC. That happens. Most teams will probably go through something like that, back-to-back road games sometime. But Arkansas did some of this to themselves. Arlington, Little Rock. I mean, you take those 2 out of it, and then Arkansas's got 5 games in a row, and they got 3 games in Fayetteville and 2 on the road versus 5 at 5 different places and only 1 at their home stadium. So I get it. Yes, I understand. There are reasons to enjoy going to Arlington, especially for Texas, Razorback fans there. But if you're like really looking like beyond like, what do I enjoy? What's good for the program? Is it good for the program to be playing Power 5 teams in Little Rock, to be playing Texas A&M in Arlington? Is that good for the program? Or is that just something that you would enjoy for your own convenience? I'm not calling you out, Casey. Not specifically. I get it. Jeff Cato says, Jeff Cato, by the way, is a 5-year anniversary follower. There's nothing to gain by playing Arkansas State anywhere. I think it probably makes the most sense if you're going to play anybody in Little Rock than playing like Arkansas State. Cato says also, we have some spoiled fans that want football team to come to them. Great minds, Jeff. We give away home advantage, recruiting, and money. Keith Jackson says we're going to win out. I mean, that would be nice. Alabama's in there too, at Tuscaloosa, But I think Arkansas has got a chance to win all those other 3. I'm not saying that you never have a chance to beat somebody, because crazy things happen in football, but, that game is in Tuscaloosa also. We talked about how hard it is to run on the road. Landon Montgomery, a follower, says, Trey, dude, is Mississippi State about to embarrass our DBs? Never thought about it would be a liability this year. I mean, it's not just the DBs, because linebackers are going to be involved in this too. It's going to be everybody, Are they going to throw for 300-something yards? Yeah. If you're not expecting them to throw for 300-something yards, then I would say to expect that. Now, if they throw for 400 or more, maybe then it's a little more time to get concerned. Again, at its best, Arkansas's defense plays pretty well. I mean, at its best, it's giving up 10 to 10. Now, the difference is Hudson Card, Zach Calzada, before Calzada, kind of figured things out a little bit. I mean, less experienced quarterbacks, they definitely took advantage of it. See how it plays out. Curtis McMillan says, hey, Trey, I always look forward to your walk and talks. Please keep doing them. Why did you stop calling your roofer and getting his take on HawgSports? I know. Next I'm going to call my insurance adjuster, get his take. Well, I appreciate the comments on the walk and talk. I mean, for now, there's no plans to stop doing the walk and talk. I will say this. The UAPB one, I did not travel to UAPB. Had some things going on up here, and I just walked around, close by the neighborhood, just because I feel like people would rather me do that. Normally, during COVID or before that, like when I wouldn't travel for an away game, I would just do the studio show. People like to walk and talk, so I just go outside and start walking around and do it that way. So I don't have plans right now to travel to LSU or Alabama right now. And the reason is just because the more things kind of evolve here, and I'm not saying I'm not going to travel for road games anymore. That's not what I'm saying. But I watch, when I travel for a road game, I watch one game, and it's Arkansas. And I love that. That's the game I want to watch. If I had to pick any game, I'm obviously watching Arkansas. But I feel uninformed when it comes down to it. Like the next day, maybe on Monday or something, I'll be like, who lost? They lost? Because I've been dead focused on Arkansas, and it's not just like the going to the game part, because that's the best part. Obviously, if I could just pop in and go to Baton Rouge, and be in the stadium, that's fine. But it's the travel getting down there. It's the travel getting back. It's figuring out where your parking spot is, being in unfamiliar territory, all of those things that go into it. And, by the end of it, you haven't watched any other football games, and I just feel kind of uninformed by it. Now, obviously, being in Fayetteville, it takes me 20 minutes, 25 minutes with traffic to get to my parking spot. I know exactly where it is. I pop in there, cover the game, do the walk and talk, come home. It's a lot different at home. So that's just kind of my thoughts on it. So I don't have plans right now to go to Baton Rouge or to Tuscaloosa. Some people may not like that. I don't know. But for me, I feel like I can do so much more in terms of producing content, being informed on the world of college football, kind of by sitting back. And maybe it's something we look at in the future of sending somebody else to the games. I don't know. But, I feel like in a lot of ways, the only reason I'm going to these games is because people want to see me walking around the stadium. And the last couple of them, it's been a lawnmower and a blower in the background, which is frustrating because it's not cheap. It's not cheap to do these trips. MP Rich, 1-year anniversary follower, once again, says Curtis is the GOAT. Yes, he is. He does a great job. Again, follow him at Kurt Wilkerson _ on Twitter. Landon Montgomery says, do you think this team is expecting a better season? Seems like they let go of the rope a bit after Ole Miss. I don't think that they let go of the rope. I think against Auburn, they had some really unfortunate calls. I feel like Auburn's kind of hitting their stride at the same time, too. And they had some plays that didn't go against them, and they're beat up. We're talking about playing so many weeks of straight football without a break for a team that overall, depth-wise, doesn't have a lot of it. So, and I think we saw that against UAPB. So I think this was desperately needed time off, and they got 4 games here. 4 games. And 3 of them I look at and say they can win these. LSU at Baton Rouge is always going to be hard, but LSU can be had. We know that. They can be beaten, okay? We know Arkansas is going to be formidable against most anybody in Fayetteville, and that Missouri game should be an Arkansas win. They should beat Missouri. I don't care if it was at Columbia. I don't care if it was at Arrowhead or where it's going to be, but it's going to be in Fayetteville. Arkansas should win that game. Marco Giles says, is Greg Brooks okay? Also, do you think we could eventually see Devin Bush? We have seen Devin Bush some, and I don't know that Greg Brooks is absolute 100% because I do feel like he's playing better ball earlier in the year. Chris Light says, I hope for 7 wins. You agree. 7 wins means beating Mississippi State or LSU, and I think most of us are saying Arkansas should beat Missouri. So there's 3 opportunities to get 2 of those wins, in my opinion. Again, I'm not saying that they could never beat Alabama. I'm just saying the odds are so stacked against them, it's hard for us to sit here and entertain that idea right now, Ben Rose says, what's the injured list look like? Well, I think the key injuries were Dalton Wagner at right tackle, who's been out with a broken finger. He's going to be back. And Markel Utze, who's been out also. I can't remember what Utze's injury is. Now, Ridgeway got a little bit banged up in the UAPB game, and Zach Zymas did also, and Zach could be out for a bit, but he plays more on special teams and those kind of things. Other than that, we're talking about sprains, bumps, bruises, aches, stingers, those types of things. And KJ wasn't 100% in the Auburn game, and I don't know if he was 100% in the UAPB game or not, but he should be a lot better. And Traylon Burks, they really took it easy on him. He's been in a boot anytime he hadn't been on the football field since fall camp. Chris Light says 7-5 and a bowl win and win a bowl. Depends on the opponent. Right now, I've seen Arkansas projected in the Outback Bowl against Michigan. That'd be fun. Take that one again. Keith Jackson says, why are we not running jet sweeps with Hornsby? It wouldn't surprise me to see them maybe start incorporating Hornsby a little bit in some packages like that. Not like putting him at wide receiver, but actually, saying, hey, let's work on this jet sweep with Hornsby and maybe one pattern or something, and get him in there a couple times a game. Who's the kid on the banner on the side of the page? That is Will Rogers. I usually put a player or coach for the opposing team over on the banner side, Chris Light asks. 5-year anniversary faller Don Eldred says, I think we're on the road in October again next year. Keith Jackson says, Johnson's going to be a star. Pat Gamble says, go Razorbacks, 5-year anniversary follower. Top fan Chris Light says, we win this one. We need to win this one in Missouri bad, against Missouri. Chris Light says 7. Brad Hodges, who is a 5-year anniversary follower, says Trey, will DJ start and or get a minimum of 15 touches? Well, Sam Pittman was asked about that again today. I wrote a long article about the things that that he has done this season, and when you look at it, he deserves more carries. I'd kind of broken it down like, okay, he needs to get about 75 touches the rest of the way. Okay, and if he does that and averages about 5.5 yards a carry, which right now he's averaging 6.9, but as the lead back, you expect that to maybe go down a little bit more. That gets him. I think that gets him like over 700 yards for the season. So, Chris Light says we need 2 or 4, and then says why, crybaby. I'm not sure what you're talking about there, Chris. Chris Light says, do you need to get all the games, especially the ones we might win now? Alabama, we're not going to win. You don't need to get do you need to get all the games, especially the ones we might win now? Alabama, there's no period. I'm sorry, Chris. I'm not sure exactly what you're saying there. Philip Warren says, why do you think we give KJ Moore 3rd, 4th, and 1 carries? Why do you think we don't give? They have given him some action in those scenarios, but I don't know. I guess I haven't looked at it specifically on what down and distance he's getting the carries. Chris Light says, do you need the tax deduction? So I'll be fine. You keep going, especially if we might win. I'm sorry, Chris. I just can't understand what you're writing sometimes, but there's not enough periods in here, buddy. Let's see. It just jumped on me. Rocky Carter, who is a one-year anniversary follower, says, I can't see the three-man front working the whole game against these guys. I'm afraid they'll pick us apart. Got to get some pressure. Our backer is going to be critical. Kevin Venable, who's a 5-year anniversary follower, says, do you think Browse will be up for any of the Texas coaching jobs? I think probably he will be a guy that's mentioned. I mean, we've already seen him and Barry Odom both popping up. Chris Light says, great show. Appreciate that, Chris. Ricky Williamson says, Trey, do you agree D. Johnson should be our starting running back? Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about it. I've been beating the Dominic Johnson drum for weeks upon weeks now. I mean, that first of all, he should be getting more carries, and then, kind of went to, he's obviously one of the top 2 running backs on the team, too, where I think that he is the best running back on the team, and Rocket Sanders is number 2, and that's how the rotation should go, in my opinion. Now, should Traylon Smith continue to get in there some? Sure. A.J. Green some? Sure. But this idea that we're rotating 4 backs, nobody's doing that. 2 backs. Rotate 2 backs, sprinkle in the other guys here and there. But Dominic Johnson, in my opinion, has earned a job as the starter. He needs to be getting at least 15 carries a game. Chris Light says, driving text, sorry. You know better than that, Chris. I don't have to tell you that. Be careful. And we'll get it out with this one. Marco Giles says, let's see some Dominic Johnson on 3rd and 1. Better. Exactly. Better yet, let him run the rock, and we'll be resetting the chains every 1 or 2 plays. Laugh face. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for joining me. I know we took a little bit of time off, so I appreciate you guys being patient with us. We needed a little bit of time. Everybody needed a little bit of a break. Get healthy. Get the vocal cords. See, it's over 50 minutes here, and I start doing that. So vocal cords, we're going to get those going now. All right. I want to thank Curtis Wilkerson for joining us. Of course, all of you for joining in and asking your questions as well. And that'll do it. All right, so we'll be back with you guys. We'll have plenty of content for today after practice. We'll be back with you guys on Thursday to break things up a little bit more. And be on the lookout for Hog Hoops Live. I'm not sure when Curtis plans on dropping his Season 2 episode, but that should be coming up soon. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining me. This has been Trey Biddy with HawgSports.com, and we'll catch you next time.